End of this year, 3,000 long-term unemployed people will be asked to work in local authorities around the country. They'll be randomly selected and told to work for 19.5 hours a week. In return for that work, they'll be paid an extra €20 a week on top of their existing benefits. But if they refuse to take part in this new gateway scheme, their benefits could be cut. So, is this a way back into the workplace for the long-term unemployed, or exploitation of the vulnerable in exchange for forced labour? I'm joined now by TD Jim Daly, who first came up with this idea 4 years ago. Sinead Ryan is a columnist, Claire Daly, a socialist TD, and Pádraig Ó Céide, who's an entrepreneur. Jim, I'm going to come to you first, seeing as you say it was your idea 4 years ago. How can it be right and just to say to somebody, you're working now for the local authority for €1 an hour?
Well, it's first of all, it's not right to say you're working for €1 an hour. If somebody works in the gateway scheme, they'll work 19.5 hours for €208 minimum payment.
OK, but if you don't work at all and if you're just getting your unemployment benefit, you're getting 188.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so if you're sitting at home, you're getting 188, and if you're going out to work, you're getting 208. So that's €20.
The logic of that argument, Claire, well, I take €188 from my salary and from everybody else's salary, and will we, reduce our salary accordingly? Like, the Department of Social Protection is spending 5% of its budget on labour activation measures. That's €1 billion this year. There's some hugely popular schemes like TOOS, the Rural Social Scheme, and the Community Employment Scheme. Those schemes, the Community Employment Scheme has 25,000 people working it. They're getting €20 on top of their benefits. Those schemes are hugely oversubscribed. The issue I meet in my clinics down in West Cork, I had them yesterday in Clonakilty, I had 2 people into me who their 3 years are up on the Community Employment Scheme, and they were begging me to know, could I do anything to get an extension for them? The TOOS scheme is the same. They have €20 extra on top of their benefits, and they're hugely subscribed.
But how do you pay for your bus fare? How do you pay for your lunch to get to that job when you're only getting €20 a week on top of your
The only difference in this scheme, and I don't know why all the excitement that's coming from people who are opposed to it, because the only difference with this scheme to the other schemes is this is being managed by the councils, and that's what I have pushed for all the time. There's a structure in place with the councils. To answer your question directly about how people will travel to work, there is a facility there. The councils, there's €2.85 million being taken from the Dormant Accounts Funds given to the councils to accommodate this scheme, and that can include travel to work. There will be nobody out of pocket as a result of taking up this scheme.
Better to be doing something than nothing.
Look, it kind of begs the question, if these schemes are so oversubscribed and it's so wonderful, why would you have an element of coercion in it, that you either take up this exploitative labour position or else your benefits will be cut? This is nothing more than a chain gang as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we have people out there who are desperate for work, that's true, but we have to look at it against the backdrop of the local authorities. 9,000 jobs have been axed from the local authorities. The idea that frog marching people out to cut grass or pick up litter is somehow giving them dignity, is somehow reactivating them into the workforce. It isn't. It's massaging the dole queue figures, that's all it is. It's undermining real jobs in the local authorities. I think it's
Tell me about that point. Why do you say it's undermining jobs?
Because if you take it, in the last year alone, 3,000 jobs were eliminated from the local authorities. Now, if you take the area where I live, Fingal, which has actually got the biggest youth population in the country, the reality now is that out of a workforce of just short of 1,300 people, 21 people are under the age of 30. So the public sector recruitment embargo has meant that jobs that traditionally people would have gone into when they left school at entry level, could have had a secure, permanent, pensionable job, are gone. And instead we're expecting to go in
people
and work essentially for nothing.
Sinead, can I bring you in on this? I mean, do you take Claire's point that if you enforce this, if you make people work for the local authorities, you're actually letting the government away with continuing that embargo on jobs and not hiring people to do real work for a real week's pay?
I take it in point. I mean, if we had the money to hire real people to do real jobs for their full wage, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now. We don't have that money, and that's a very ideal situation. And I heard the Minister earlier saying that he's creating 50 or 60,000 jobs a year. That point is moot, actually. I'm not sure I agree with it. But even if we are, you're looking at 5 or 6 years before we get all the people off the dole that are already on it. My view on it would be that of the hundreds of thousands of people on the dole, the very vast majority of them want to work. They have been working, they lost their jobs, they aspire to working again. There's a very small group of people, even when we'd full employment, probably 3 or thereabouts %, who have never worked, will never work, and have no interest in working. So we're not I don't think it's being targeted at those people, and there's bigger issues with them.
Well, we don't know because it's going to be a random selection process.
Okay, but even so, most people in this country would prefer to be working than not working. And people work for all kinds of reasons, not just for the money they put in their pocket. And yes, I know that's important. They work to get up in the morning, to have somewhere to go, to be productive, to meet other people, to have high self-esteem and to have a sense of worth. I don't know anybody who would honestly and truly be happier sitting at home doing nothing than getting out and doing something.
Do you believe
in
paying people unemployment benefit? I mean, that's a very basic question, but I'm just wondering, do you believe that?
Of course, we have to pay people unemployment benefit. Anybody who has lost a job and can't work and has to support a family or a mortgage, of course we should support them. No question about that. And I'm not saying for a minute that 20 quid a week isn't mean. Of course it is. You know, the numbers are very, very low. And to a lot of people, that wouldn't seem very fair, especially if they're working alongside colleagues who are getting minimum wage or even higher than that. So I'm not supporting the amount of money involved. It's the principle of offering something or making it available for them to get out and do something. Not everybody is going to be able to retrain under the Springboard scheme as an IT worker. It's just not possible.
There's no training involved in this scheme at all, by the way.
Well, in some of the jobs there will be training because the council will be taking over. But
there's training, like Safe Pass. The councils have been given a grant, a specific grant per head for every person that does it, to train them both in health and safety.
To train them how to hold the thing to pick up the litter, or what is exactly?
They can work in IT, they can work in back office, they can work as tourism ambassadors, they can work, there's loads of vacant council houses out there that need to be repaired. Anybody who has a skill in that can develop that skill by learning carpentry and furthering their carpentry skills.
But you could also be pulling weeds, Jim. I mean,
that's actually not the case at all. The positions, as they're called, are very, very limited, and they require no skill or training benefit.
I'd say that the people who are doing those jobs probably
Sinead, I just want to bring Pádraig in here.
If they're getting a fair day's pay, of course they would.
Yes. Pádraig, your view on this, you're an entrepreneur, you employ people. Is it better to be out working, doing something, than doing nothing?
It's absolutely better, Claire, to be out working. Obviously it is, than staying at home doing nothing. And I agree with you, Sinead. People do want to work. The vast majority of people do want to work. But you know what we're forgetting about? Their dignity, their self-respect. If you want to get somebody out working, and I don't care what they're getting is, in effect, €1 an hour, or €1 a day over and above what they're getting at the moment, that demoralises people. Like 3,000 people multiplied by €20, Jim, that's 60 grand. Now, if you'd up that and give them maybe €60 or €70, it's 180 to 200 grand. It's not huge money. It's small fry in the big pond. But at least, Jim, you're giving people their dignity, their integrity. You're saying, we value your work. We appreciate it. Well, maybe I am, but let me finish and then come back at me. The second thing is you start looking and giving them more. You've got people who are graduates, who've got degrees and so on. A lot of those people unemployed. The biggest chunk of unemployed people are under 25 years of age, as you know. It's a huge problem in Ireland. A lot of those are graduates. What are you going to get them to do? Like, for example, you've got a scheme there in relation to looking after and training kids, training children. Or looking after children. There's a programme there, a 3-year programme in relation to training. What should happen, I believe, is that there should be 20 hours, give them a decent pay, plus also make sure they do at least 1 day's training every week. Mandatory, 1 day's training every week. Because the most important thing you can do with anybody is give them a job, but give them the dignity and integrity around it.
Jim, you're taking people's dignity and their integrity.
The two very basic points that the people are missing here is, one, this is a labour activation measure. This is not a job that we're offering people. This is a bridge. It's a gap, to bridge them from unemployed at home all day to a work, to a structure, to within, features. Secondly, just take somebody under, we can all pick cases, but somebody under 25 years of age at the moment is getting €100 unemployment benefit. They will get a minimum of €208 for working 20 hours, and they can work the other 3 days of the week in another job if they want.
But they can't retain their €208.
They can't. No, they can't. They absolutely can. I can tell you with certainty.
Full benefits and work somewhere else for 3 days a week. That's unheard of.
But I can tell you that is the truth. They have to work 19 and a half hours in the week, and the rest of the time they're quite free to take up another position. So if you were
paid employment somewhere else and get full benefits. Are you sure about that?
I'm 100% certain. So if you're 23 years of age, right, and you're at home. and you're getting €100 a week, you can go out and get €208 a week for working 19.5 hours, and you can further work the other 2.5 days of that week that you're not working.
You could be doing quite well then, actually.
That's exactly, So that's why I'm so supportive of this
I've never heard that
scheme.
you can retain your full benefits and work 3 days a week. I've never heard that.
Well, that's not true for other schemes, Jim.
Yeah,
it certainly is not true, because I've practical experience about that. When I'm trying to take on people, they say, look, we're on this scheme, and if we go working for you, even part-time, we're better off staying on the dole.
Yeah, that's if you're a job benefit. But under this scheme, you only have to work 19.5 hours a week, and you are free to work in other jobs.
The whole ethos, Jim, with the idea that there's a compulsion that if you do not take up this position, then your benefits will be cut. Clearly, there's a realisation there that people are not going to end up going out to work 20 hours a week to end up worse off, because it will not even cover their lunch money or their bus money.
That legislation there, Claire, is long before I ever came into the Dáil. That's with every scheme that goes, every labour activation measure that has been brought in by successive governments. The legislation has said if you don't engage with them, you will have your benefits. But that's all you have to do is engage.
What I'm saying is the ethos that you're espousing is that the problem is with the unemployed. The reality is that the problem is that there are no jobs. For every job that goes up, there are multiple applicants. People are working way below their skill set precisely because there are desperate.
Okay, Claire, I just want to say, just on that point that you make about there not being enough jobs, we did hear this week from the Hotels Federation that 3/4 of their positions, they can't fill them.
Well, I find that very hard to believe, to be honest, because the reality is that there are multiple applicants for every job out there, and we need to look at the facts of this. And there are thousands of local authority jobs that have left the system. Now, instead of replacing them, and the only excuse that's been given is, well, we don't have the money. I refute that. 500 million is being taken this year out of local authority budgets to go to Irish Water, and we know where that money has been spent on consultants, on putting on meters to pauperise people. It doesn't conserve water. It doesn't create long-term sustainable jobs. So in actual fact, by transferring that money from the councils, we're preventing them from employing people at real wage levels.
Can I just move this on and ask you, do you think that because there is a random selection aspect to this, and also there's the stick, if you don't do it, your benefits will be hit, is there an element of trying to catch people out here? You know, people who are working, maybe doing a couple of nixers, that this is a way of finding them?
Well, there's only 3,000 of these positions on offer, and I dare say that if you did nothing at all, there'd be people queuing up to take them, just to have something to do during the day. And let's not forget, leaving the money aside, and I'm not arguing with anything Claire is saying in terms of the amount of money involved. 20 quid a week is nothing. However, there are hundreds and thousands of people who get up every single day in this country and coach an underage team, deliver meals on wheels, dig verges for Tidy Towns competitions, who volunteer and do that for absolutely nothing because they want to give something back to the community.
I know, but they're not forced to do that. They're doing that out of choice.
And I don't think the coercion element is probably necessary in this. I think with this, if there were 300,000 of these positions, you would probably need to force a few people out the door. 3,000, I imagine you wouldn't even have to try. If you open them up, I, for one, if I was out of work, would be much happier to get up and have somewhere to go than nowhere to go.
Okay, but you won't be given the opportunity. But you won't be given the opportunity to queue up for these jobs. You'll be randomly selected. So that's why I'm asking you whether there's an element of trying to catch people out and trying to prevent fraud.
Not necessary in this instance. Well, I think
Jim,
I
don't
think anybody's against fraud in the social welfare system. If people are claiming benefits they shouldn't claim, nobody's arguing with that.
Well, Jim, there is an element of catching out those.
There certainly is an element of fraud detection in this. I mean, if welfare fraud, there was 700 million saved last year in welfare fraud measures or welfare control measures. I heard it described by one of your colleagues as a minor phenomenon, not from this TV station or like that. But 700 million is a very significant amount, so there is an element of that. But can I also say that the Department of Social Protection will be giving 2-to-1 ratio of names. In other words, they will give Cork County Council 200 names and say, select 100 from that, with the expectation that it won't suit 100 of the people. So they're giving twice the amount of names to every council and select half it, because they know through the interview process the councils will decide that, look, it's not suitable for Jim Daly to do to this scheme or whatever. It's only for people that it will suit, it will accommodate, as with every other labour activation.
I want to come to the audience now and see what people there have to say. Kenneth, where's Kenneth O'Connor? Your Construction Workers Alliance is the group that you're from. Yeah. So, I mean, you could maybe expect that ex-construction workers who are now on benefits might be likely targets for this. What's your view?
Well, I imagine we will be probably targets for this, and it's slightly ironic that the government are spending between 500 and 600 million a year on school building projects and various other projects. But if I want to get a job on one of these places, I've got to ring a mobile phone in Belfast. And that's the truth with you. Now, your government are not managing that 500 to 600 million per year. 2 billion alone on schools are getting spent. And the only way that the likes of me or my colleagues can get onto these jobs is to ring a mobile up in Belfast and hope for the best.
OK, but what about this specific idea?
Well, I tell you, like, the United States had this chain gangs. That's exactly what it is. They wore pinstripe uniforms. These guys will be out with high-vis jackets. And that's the truth of it. But back in the 50s, the state said, no, this is degrading to people. And they stopped it. But then we have Fine Gael coming along. And Labour, I think, really ought to be ashamed of themselves going along with this. And where are the unions is another question.
OK, and we'll come to that in a moment. But I want to speak to Donal Walsh. Where's Donal? Donal, you're a business owner yourself.
Yeah,
I mean, we heard there that it's like chain gang, like being sentenced to community service.
OK, firstly, we're talking about 3,000 people. So definitely throughout the country you'll have 3,000 people that want to get up in the morning, have a purpose to get up in the morning and have a routine throughout the week. Be it all 19 and a half hours, they still like to get back into social work and whatever the case may be. And I think they should have the right to do that. I genuinely do think, though, that going back a couple of years, we took on one person in Jobridge. I thought it was a fantastic success, my own opinion. A small company can take on someone with little risk, and actually that person that we took on, we cross-trained them and is now our financial controller.
But Donald, was there not a very big difference with the Jobridge scheme, because there was a strong element of training involved, which is not involved here, apart from health and safety?
100%, but the thing is that when you give the opportunity to someone to get up in the morning, they're willing to try and they're willing to get on with themselves, and they'll push on. And they wanted to cross-train. Again, with the same system here, they want to get up in the morning and they'll just want to progress on with life in some make, shape or form and get out
Claire
there to
Daly,
do it.
a reason to get up in the morning.
I would actually say that there are 400,000 people who want to get up in the morning and go to work, but they want a decent wage for that job. And the reality is that by implementing these schemes, we're undermining existing jobs, we're undermining the rate for the job, and we're facilitating a situation where there's a race to the bottom. And that's not in anybody's interests, in my opinion.
OK, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back after this with more.
By 2016, we will only sell energy-efficient LED light bulbs. Sometimes small things can make a big difference. IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
How do I know you won't hurt us?
I've never intentionally hurt anyone.
Frank Chambers, an inmate at Finchfield Prison, escaped earlier this morning.
There's more to this story. I came to save you, Adele. I can't promise what's going to show up at the door.
I know.
Labor Day.
Hey, where are you running?
The park?
Do you mind if I join you?
Yeah, okay. Run and run with ASIC's muscle support gear.
Very welcome back to the programme. We're talking about a new scheme called Gateway, where people who are on unemployment benefit for more than 2 years may be offered a position where they can work with the local authority. They'll work for 19.5 hours a week and they'll be paid an extra €20 in benefits. We're talking with our panel and also with the audience tonight. Pádraig, you wanted to come in there and talk about this from an employer's point of view when you're giving somebody a job and when you have to take that job away.
Exactly, Claire. It's just back to the point that Donald made there earlier, just at the end of part one. And Jim, you've employed people. You've had your own business. You've employed people. The best feeling an employer can get, quite frankly, is giving somebody a job. The worst feeling you get is when you're sitting in front of somebody and say, "Sorry, I don't have any job anymore for you." Just look at the face on that person. So when you've got people who are employed, the fundamental for that, in order for them to work productively for you, you've got to say, what are their skill sets? What are they good at? What are their experiences? How you can develop them, and you pay them a decent wage for the work they do.
But this isn't a job. I mean, it's not even dressed up as
exactly,
that. It's about
Claire.
getting somebody through a period of time when there is no work available for them.
I fully agree with you. This is a bridge. This is what Jim is saying, and the government are saying it's a bridge. But it's not a bridge. A bridge is something that brings you from here over to there. And what's going to connect you to it? Training is going to connect you to it. And the most important thing, actually more important than money, is dignity and respect for the employee. And I think that's what's missing here.
Claire, you see, the jobs are there because, 20% of local authority jobs have gone. Now, does that mean that the functions that were there do not need to be done? No, it doesn't. What it means is that a lot of those functions have been outsourced, and many of them, in fact, to companies outside of Ireland, to people in the north.
You're saying the local authorities are looking for a freebie here?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that these were legitimate quality jobs that were there in terms of running our councils. They've disappeared out of the system, and wouldn't it be better that we were employing people into a secure, permanent, pensionable job where they could do the services that people need in their communities? And the only reason that's been put up, we haven't got the money, but as I've said, hundreds of millions have been taken out of local authorities that could be invested in this.
Jim, it's not a bridge. You're not taking somebody, as Pádraig says, from A to B. You're not training them to do something new. You're getting them to cut the grass and clean the drains, essentially.
Yeah, 2 points on that. I have a drawer full of CVs in my constituency office down in Bandon from the first time I put this forward in 2010, the amount of people who would give their right arm to get into this scheme and get in there. And these people looked at it in such a way that the council won't always be in a position with embargoes that they can't take on staff. 2-3 years down the road, as the economy picks up, I would be very hopeful that Cork County Council and all the councils around the country will start employing again. These, and as I said earlier, kids under 25 who are on €100 a week will go up to €208 a week for a half week's work with the council during this period. And that's why they're learning skills, and they are learning, because they are learning what it's like to go out and do, get up in the morning, go out with a team, work with a group, whatever job they're doing. If you're below on Spike Island as a tourism ambassador, you're working with a group, you're meeting visitors, you're showing them around, you'll be given the basic skills to do any of those jobs.
But you might have a very highly trained and skilled tradesperson, somebody like a carpenter who did very well in the boom, and now you are asking them to cut the grass. Isn't that?
That point is wrong as well, because the councils have the responsibility and are taking it very seriously, and that's what's causing the delay in getting all of the people. The councils have been given the CVs, right, and as I said, they've been given double the number of names as the amount of people
so they've got to match the right people to the job. And they have to go through the CVs, pick out your skill set and see what would suit you, and they have been told they have to have a wide variety. I mean, the chain gang is a complete nonsense to say this. Neither is a community employment scheme a chain gang, and it's there for years and years, and there's no paying high Fianna Fáil have said that this is like a community service sentence. This is like you were in court, you were bold, you did something wrong, and you're being told to clean up the streets.
Well, look, I think we're looking at it in a very polarised way. This isn't an either-or. Of course, proper, permanent, pensionable, secure jobs have to be created. I'd love one of them myself. I'm self-employed. So from that point of view, it's not about this replacing that. 5,000 jobs need to be created every single month if we're to get anywhere in this country. This isn't instead of that. This is to give people something to do. A lot was spoken about earlier today about dignity. Well, to me, the dignity is the work. It's not the money you get for the work. So the work is not high level. The work is not going to create computer programmers out of people who are bricklayers. That isn't going to happen. There are programs there if people want that.
Okay.
This is about getting up and getting out.
I want to come back to our audience now. Richie, where's Richie? Richie, you're a member of Unite, is that right, the
Correct,
union?
yeah.
What does the union think of all this?
Well, our union is opposed to this, and I think the point about it is that the difference between this scheme and the problem with this scheme and all of the existing schemes is the compulsory and the enforced nature of this scheme. If these 3,000 positions were open to applicants in the morning, it'd be oversubscribed, and it'd be oversubscribed tenfold. The problem is they're not being open to applicants. People are being selected, and we don't even know the criteria under which people are being selected.
What do you think will be the criteria then? What are you concerned about?
Well, I'm concerned about the secrecy around it. I'm also concerned about the fact that
Well,
there was wholesale job losses in the local authorities. People were, if you like, enticed and enforced out. And now what we're doing is we're replacing them with this scheme. So those redundancies that took place in the local authorities weren't genuine redundancies in the first instance. And if you take this argument to its logical conclusion, let's have another 3,000 redundancies in the HSE and replace them with people off the live register, but we'll give them an extra €20 a week. Okay. That's the logical conclusion to this argument.
Stephen Flood, you're on the other side of the argument. Where's Stephen? Stephen, you work for a company called Goldcore, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Do you think it's right to say to people who are on long-term benefits, off you go, work for 19.5 hours a week and we'll give you an extra €20?
I think it's a very polarising issue. I think there's no shame in unemployment. I don't think employers look at people who've been unemployed for a long time and think, I'm not going to employ you. I think it's important for those who are unemployed to get skills and to be part of a workforce and to work in a company environment or in any respect, just to build up their skills and know what it's like to work again. I think there's a lot of a great problem with youth unemployment as well, where they haven't actually had extensive work experience, and I think there might be some benefits there. I think there should be more carrot and less stick in this situation, and there might be ways where they can incentivise participation by maybe giving extra tax credits in years to come in future earnings, and that might get people more mobilised in that area to participate. I don't think people should be really forced into it, and I think if it was open, it'd be probably oversubscribed tremendously.
Okay. If there are jobs, though, available and work going in local authorities, Jim, should we not be employing people to do that, giving people a job to do that, as opposed to using this scheme to fill the post?
Yeah, and just on one point as well, there is a stamp paid for everybody who takes on this placement for a while. The authority, as their employer, the local authority, not the Department of Social Protection, will pay a stamp for them as well, a Class A stamp. But just to answer your question about the unions have been involved in this all the way through. The negotiations have been taking place with the unions for the last 18 months, and the unions have stipulated that they will not allow anybody who comes on this placement to do any of the core jobs that are the jobs of their members. So the jobs that are being done by the people on this have to be jobs that are not already being done.
But what does that mean? What kind of jobs will they be then?
Well, there's lots of jobs that people would point out in every council that aren't being done at the moment. There's lots of different work, and variety of, I suppose,
But you've got to prove that you don't really need the job done by a person who's employed by the
unions.
council.
I'm not a spokesperson for the unions in this, but that's what they have stipulated and insisted, that they will not allow these people to do the jobs that their members are already doing. And the unions are negotiating with the management. There has to be agreement. We all know how that works. The unions and the management have to get agreement before it can run ahead. That negotiations have been going on for some time, but they have agreed to allow it, provided that they're informed of the jobs that are being done and that there is absolutely no displacement.
Okay, so this is not going to be work that could be done by a local authority
as you've
worker.
heard, some unions have agreed, some unions clearly disagree with the proposition, and you see it is undermining existing jobs no matter what way you look at it. And again, I'll use an example from my own area, libraries. In the Fingal area, over 50% of the library staff are over age 50. And as they're retiring, they're not being replaced, which has led to a crisis in the service. The library hours have been cut. So what's the solution? Well, it isn't going out and employing people as librarians who've gone and done that training for a decent wage. Instead, you're bringing temporary people in at the lowest grade to do the sort of very unskilled aspect of the job, and it's downgrading the job for everybody.
OK, we're going to leave it there. Before we do, just a couple of comments from people who are watching at home. Hire them properly, end of. It's not a scheme, it's a job. If people are working, it's exploitation. Claire Daly, says another listener, would prefer people to sit on their behinds rather than give a government initiative any support. Surely most people would rather be busy. State-sponsored slavery, says another. Is it even legal? Miriam, over to you.
Thanks, Claire. But look, before we close tonight, we couldn't leave you without discussing the continuing really serious crisis in